Autogeek.net has everything you need to keep your vehicle looking its best. Mothers, Meguiar's, Wolfgang, Diamondite, 3M, Pinnacle, and more. Autogeek.net carries over 60 brands. Autogeek's selection is huge. Our prices are low. Our expert staff can answer any question you have, and we ship right to your door. Autogeek.net. We are car care.
Hey, Mike Phillips here, broadcasting live over the internet in Lincoln, Nebraska at my good buddy Wes Collins' shop, Pro Header Systems. And boy, do we have a special project for you today. But first, let me introduce the man behind this whole program, Wes Collins. Wes, come on in. How you doing, Wes?
Nice to see you here, Mike. Really appreciate you making the trip.
Hey, that's no problem. Me and Yancey flew out here from Stuart, Florida. You have excellent facilities. We're all set up to have some fun. But before we get started, why don't you share with us and the audience what we're doing here today?
Basically today, we are finishing a project that a father is going to give back to a son that a son hasn't seen for 17 years. He drove the car through high school, parked it to go to law school, went to college, and then the car kind of disappeared, got parked in the barn in the corner, and as the farm over years, the car became covered with dust. The car actually had so much dust on it, we didn't know what color it was when we found it. A couple years later, the doctor calls me. He and I have been together roughly for about 12 years, racing back and forth, doing some business adventures. He's really been a good friend to me, so I felt the need to do this for him out of the kindness of our hearts. So as we started in this project, we started thinking, how can we really increase the knowledge of what's going on? My thoughts were to get the best person I know in the business detail world to put the best paint on the car, House of Colors, and bring Mike Phillips here to Lincoln, Nebraska to finish this car for me.
Oh, you're way too kind. So tell us, what is this car again?
This is a 69 AMC AMX.
This is a muscle car. Now, when I went to high school, one of my buddies actually had one of these, and it had the 390 big block, and I got to tell you, with the 4-speed and some pretty low gears, it was actually a lot of fun to drive around in.
Great cars, Mike. These are kind of the hidden jewel. People weren't aware that this was a 2-seater.
Yep.
This is kind of a one-off kind of thing that they did early to keep up with the muscle car years. Some people forget these cars ran in the SCCA.
Yep.
So there's a little bit of history with this car. But for the most part, this was an original 390 4-speed car that will now be a daily driven show-style car, LS1 6-speed ride.
Yeah, so now what's the story behind putting that small block Chevy in there?
Well, we wanted the latest fuel injection, and as you know, when you drive these older cars and they're still carbureted, the gas mileage isn't that great, you get out with that old school exhaust smell. We're trying to get away from that. We're trying to move technology forward to where we can laptop tune. We want to be able to hop in this car, drive 3 or 4 hours, make it feel like it's a brand new Cadillac, but still get that appeal to go down the highway and get that old school thumbs up.
That rumble, too.
That rumble.
Now, you build custom headers, don't you?
Yes.
Now, is this going to have a set of your headers showcased on it?
It will have a set of our latest LS1, what we like to call the compound counterbore flange in it. And this setup is something I'm going to do by hand with some of the latest tricks we've been working on here in the lab, header-wise, that we use in some of our NASCAR stuff and some of our latest Pro Stock stuff that has proven to work.
Okay, very good. Well, tell you what, we got to keep moving along. So the next thing I want to do is I want to bring in the painter, and he's going to share with us exactly what he did to get this thing painted. Ben, won't you come on in? Hey, good to see you, Ben.
Good to see you, Mike.
So tell us what you exactly did to get this paint laid down on all the panels.
Well, we started with the house color sealer, made sure to denib everything so it was nice and flat before we even started with base coat. Laid 3 coats of base on it, denibbed in between each coat, just keep it nice and flat. After that, we went ahead and put 4 coats of clear on it.
Okay, now, just so everybody in the audience knows, when you say denib, tell them what you mean by that.
When you're painting, you usually get dirt. Usually it's off the car, or off of myself, or something.
Something in the air lands in the paint while it's still wet,
Yep.
and that's going to be stuck in there while it's flashing dry.
Yep.
And if you don't remove that and you put the next coat over, it starts to build it up. So what you want to do is denib it or remove that so you're back to a flat surface before you put the next coat on.
Correct.
Okay. Now, there's also some science behind the type of reducer you use to gauge how fast each coat's going to dry or flash in between coats. Now, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Basically, reducers are geared for whatever temperature it is outside or in the booth. Since it's winter here right now, we were in a temperature-controlled booth, so we could keep the degrees 80 all the time. In the summertime, we don't have that luxury. It'll be upwards of 100, 105 in the booth, so we have to use a hotter reducer.
Okay.
They make one, it's usually a 98, but it's rated for 105 degrees, so that's just kind of...
And what this does is it controls how fast or how slow each coat dries. Yep. So you can get on to the next coat. Because you don't want to put a follow-up coat on too fast or you can run into problems.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, one of the things I noticed when I first came here is I walked around and I carefully inspected each one of the panels. And by the way, all of the major panels are removed and are on panel stands, and then we have the major car body over here. And what this does is it makes it really easy for us to sand and then buff and get around the edges because we don't have the other body panels joined up next to them. So we're going to sand each one of these one at a time, and then we're going to tackle the body. But one of the things I noticed was actually you did a really good job of laying down the paint. There is some orange peel, but it's actually very, very mild.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what we're going to do next is what I call a test spot. But before I do that, we have some people here to help us, and I'd like to just go ahead and introduce them and bring them on in. First, this is Ben, and we got two Bens here, so we're going to call him Ben 1, and here's Ben 2. Ben?
Mike.
And Ben is a member of our forum. On our forum, he goes by the forum name WORS. And just for fun, Ben, you want to tell us what that means?
I just came up with it one time playing online games when I was real little, so there's...
It just stuck?
Yeah, it just stuck. There's really not much meaning behind it.
That's kind of the story behind most people's forum nicknames. It's just something that happened in the past. Okay, then we got Paul. Paul is a gentleman that attended my detailing boot camp class. Good to see you again, Paul. Thank you.
Nice seeing you, Mike.
He flew all the way out here with me and Yancey to give us a hand. And Paul is actually a professional detailer on the marine side. So primarily, what do you do?
Gel coat.
Gel coat.
And, aluminum, things like that.
Okay, so Paul is also someone that comes down to Autogeek's facilities in Stuart, Florida, and he helps me with a lot of the show cars that we buff out down there, and he's very proficient in all aspects of detailing. So it's really nice to have another guy here on set to give us a hand knocking out this car. And then we got one more special guest here today, Bob Eichelberg, the president of Flex North America, who kindly provided all the polishers we're going to be using here today. Come on in, Bob.
Hey, Mike, how are you? Good seeing you again.
Good seeing you again. So tell you what, we're getting ready to do a little test spot here, and of course we're going to be using the Flex PE14 Rotary Polisher and the Flex 3401 Force Rotation Dual Action Polisher to create a swirl-free finish on this black finish.
Perfect. Let's get her going.
Okay, so what we're going to do next is a test spot. Now, in the forum world, I'm always teaching guys to do test spots. And the purpose of this is to dial in a system to one small area and prove that it works before you do the rest of the car. And the reason why is because you want to make sure whatever it is you're going to be doing is working so you don't waste any time or waste any steps, and especially any products. Now, a lot of times when you go to sand down a car, it's pretty cut and dried. And but I want to tell you, there's one time where I came across a guy that painted a yellow Ferrari. He sanded it down, the entire car, and then when he went to try to remove his sanding marks, he couldn't get them out. He called me up. He's a 3M guy. I was a Meguiar's guy. We threw everything we had at it, and we could not get the sanding marks out without overheating the paint to one small area. And I stood back and I told the guy, I go, look, if we can't get the sanding marks out of one small area on this nice, easy to buff flat panel, you're not going to be able to get them out of the entire car. So he said, what's the solution? And I said, I think you're going to have to repaint the car. So instead of making that mistake here today, and even though I have a lot of confidence in Ben's painting skills, we are going to go ahead and do a little test sample where I'm going to sand down a section of paint. I'm going to show the entire process that we think will work on the rest of the car. So let's go ahead and just do that. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with a 1000 grit 3M wet dry paper. Okay, so this is right here. This is 1000 grit. I'm going to wrap this around a foam backing pad. And then to do this, I'm going to use a clean source of water. And I have a few drops of soap in here just to add some lubrication to the sanding process and to help keep the paper from getting loaded up. And it's always important to use a real clean source of water because you don't want to get any dirt particles trapped between your paper and the paint, because this will put in something we call tracers. Tracers are deeper scratches and they'll take longer to get them out. So we want to try to avoid the tracers. Now there's all different ways to hand sand, and what I'm going to do today is a technique I learned from a good friend of mine. His name is Rich Evans. Sometimes you may see him on a show called Car Warriors. And what he taught me is what's called a crosshatch pattern. And this is a little bit different than what most people think. A lot of people think that means you start out with one grit sanding one direction, then switch up to a finer grit and sand the different direction. And that's actually not what we're going to do here. Is what I'm going to use is the same grit and sand in two directions. And the reason for this is so I don't put deeper and deeper ruts by always going in just one direction. That would look like this. And this is actually a fairly fast hand action. Okay, so one of the things I was doing is I was keeping my hand in a very tight pattern as I moved across that section, and I think I just made about 40 different passes. Now I'm going to switch and go diagonally across this and repeat that same type of action. Okay. And I'm winded. We just all got up about an hour ago, so now I'm going to take another sanding block and I'm just going to use this as a squeegee and pull this off. And I'm not sure if Yancey can get in here, but if you look in here, this is a white slurry. This whiteness here is actually clear coat paint coming off the car. Now in the old days, we had what they called color coats or color sanding. And the reason it was called color sanding is because if you were sanding a blue car, you would see a blue slurry coming off. Well, when clear paint is sanded, it turns opaque. It turns white. It looks kind of like milk water. And that's what we're seeing right here is a white slurry coming off. Okay, now what we're looking for is we want to see the paint completely flat. And usually what you can see is around the perimeter of where I've sanded, you'll see where the orange peel kicks in, and then where I've sanded is completely gone. And since I've got a couple different sets of eyes here, tell you what, why don't you guys take a look and tell me, is the peel all gone there? Let's blow on it. There you go. Get the water to evaporate off.
Yeah, I don't see any peel.
You can see where it is around the edges here, but the section I've sanded is now completely flat, and that's the goal. And the whole purpose of this, in case you don't know anything about wet sanding, is a true show car finish has excellent DOI. DOI stands for distinction of image. Now a mirror has perfect DOI, so when you look into a mirror, you completely see a perfect reflection coming off of it. And what you want is to sand this flat, so when you see reflections come out of it, all the lines are completely clear. If you have orange peel, it has a tendency to cloud it or to mute it. So that's the whole purpose of getting a show car finish. That's what we want, right? Okay, is to get that surface completely flat. And even though this is dull right now, when we put it through the polishing steps, we're going to restore the gloss and clarity, but then we'll have that clear image. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to switch over to 1500 grit. Okay, so this is a piece of 1500 wet dry 3M, and again I'm going to wrap this around my backing pad. Okay, rinse it off, make sure it's clean, and again spray down some water here from a clean water source. Just a few drops of soap in there, and I'm going to repeat that same sanding process. And again, I'm going to keep my strokes very close together as I move across here, and after I do about 40 strokes in one direction, I'm going to switch and go 40 strokes in the other direction. Now I'm going to go the other direction. Something I want to show you is anytime you're hand sanding, if you look at my pad, I'm not sanding like this, I'm twisting it and sanding like that. Okay, and that's so you don't have these edges here of your backing plate gouging into the paint in that linear fashion. Okay. I'm earning my lunch today, buddy. Okay, so let's go ahead. Actually, what I want to do is I want to squeegee that off. And that just makes it kind of easier to see where the orange peel starts and where it ends. Okay. Okay. Okay, guys, check that out. How's that look? What we're looking for here now is we want to see a uniform sanding mark pattern. Okay, we want to see the level of opaqueness start to come up because we've reduced the level of our grit here. How's it look?
Looks good. Looks like all the 1,000 grit scratches are out of it.
Yeah, and that's the goal. Like Ben here was saying, we started with 1,000, now we hit it with 1,500. And what we're trying to do is remove the 1,000 and leave 1,500, which is a shallower level of sanding mark. And then we're going to take a machine sand this and actually bring that level of sanding mark even to a more shallow degree to make the buff out even easier. So Ben, tell you what, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to machine sand this. Now to do this, this is what's called a Trizact P3000 sanding disc. This is a Porter cable DA polisher. I got a 3M backing plate and I got a 3M interface pad. This is a 1/4 inch thick foam. And what this does, what this does is it actually just kind of makes the sanding process a lot smoother, and it allows the paper to follow the disc to follow any contours on the panel. And it's real important that you just line this all up as close as you can. Okay. And then again, we're going to go back to our clean water source. A little bit right onto the face of the pad there. And anytime you're machine sanding, you want to keep this disc rotating. You want to just sit in there jiggling. So you want to keep it rotating. So I'm going to put this on the speed setting 5. Okay? And this is a fairly fast hand movement. If you let this stay in one place for too long, you're going to take a lot of paint off, and you don't want to do that. What you're actually looking for is UMR, Uniform Material Removal. I want to take just as much paint off here as I do here. So I want to have a nice smooth crosshatch pattern that ensures uniform material removal, and I want to keep this moving at a fairly fast arm speed. So that would look just like this. Okay, let's wipe that off. Can I get you to take that off and just hand me the 5,000 disc? Okay, so I think that was 6 times I went over that. 6 what we call section passes. And I want you guys to kind of back me up here. Now when you look down there, you can see the reflection of the overhead lights, can't you? So we're reducing the sanding marks to such a shallow level that we're actually starting to restore gloss to the paint from sanding. Okay, so now we're not done there yet. Now it used to be 3,000 was about as high as you could go. 3M recently introduced their 5,000 grit sanding disc. And what this is going to do is it's going to refine that sanding mark pattern to an even more shallow level. And again, that's going to make the buffing go a lot faster. And this is key because if you have a shallow sanding mark pattern, it's going to buff out faster. And that means you're not going to introduce as much heat to the paint. And contrary to a lot of misconceptions out there, you don't want to heat up clear coats. You want to try to keep everything as cool as you can. Okay, so clean water source. Here we go. There you go, bin 2. Did you guys count how many section passes that was? Like 5. Okay. So you usually need 5 to 6 section passes to remove the previous sanding mark pattern and replace it with the new sanding mark pattern. And look at that. Yeah, you can. In case you can't see that on the camera, this is just like dull paint. It doesn't even look sanded anymore. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove our sanding marks. Now to do this, we're going to use a product from Menzerna. This is the brand new Menzerna FG400. That stands for Fast Gloss 400. This is a compound that has the ability to remove down to 1,200 grit sanding marks. Now we just put in 5,000, so they should come out pretty easily. One thing I want to show you, I need the spur. Anytime you're compounding, just to make sure no dirt or particulates get onto your pad, you always want to take and spur this. Just like that. Make sure that pad is completely clean, and also refluff up the fibers so it's going to buff and actually move over the surface easier. Now this uses a very complex abrasive technology, and I talked to Jeff Silver, the president of Menzerna USA, about this, and the goal of this is to cut fast and to finish out like a polish. And I've used this on a number of cars since it came out, and I think you're going to be amazed by what you see here. Now to pull these sanding marks out, I'm going to use what's called the 10 at 10 technique. I'm going to put my pad down flat, I'm going to tilt it up about 10 degrees, I'm going to run that strip of product in at the 10 o'clock mark, if you're looking at this like it was a clock. And what that does is that pulls that strip of product into the pad instead of throwing it all over my friends here. I'm going to make a few section passes, and I'm going to go ahead and wipe off, and I want you to take a look at how beautiful this paint looks just after the compounding step. Also, to do this, I am using the Flex PE14 Rotary Polisher. The cool thing about this is this dials down to 400 RPM, goes up to 2100 RPM. They put the variable speed dial right here where it's easy to get to with your thumb. I'm going to put this on the 1 setting, and that makes it even easier to pick up my bead without throwing product over my buddies. Just like that. Bring my speed up. Okay, now when I first started that, I actually give it some fairly firm pressure, and that's to engage the abrasives, and the wool fibers are actually a type of an abrasive with the paint to cut out those sanding marks. Then, for the last part of my pass, I brought my pressure up a little bit to kind of polish out, leave a little higher finish. And did that look hard, guys?
No, not at all.
Okay, now check that out. Give it one more wipe. There you go. How's that look?
The sand marks are out.
That's what
Looks like there's some minor scratches.
You mean the swirls there? The haze?
Yeah.
Okay, so there is. That's exactly right. What we're looking for now is we want to make sure the sanding marks are completely removed. And they're gone, but what's left is, if you can see at the right angle, there's a little bit of a haze here, and it follows the pattern I last made when I moved the rotary buffer over the paint. That's primarily from the fibers of the pad. Each one of these fibers can actually cut that paint, and that's what you're seeing here. It's not so much the abrasive technology, it's the fibers, and that's okay because this is just the compounding step. Now traditionally in a body shop, what they would do next is they'd throw a foam pad on a rotary buffer, and they would go ahead and rebuff that panel with the rotary buffer. But what I want to show you here is a Flex 3401. Now this is a forced rotation dual action polisher. By forced rotation I mean this does not free spin. In order to turn this, I'd have to actually grab that with my hand, and you can hear the gears. Okay, so this is gear driven. That's what that looks like. And what that's going to do is going to remove the swirls left by the wool pad and the rotary buffer, and work them out because it's not only rotating, it's oscillating at the same time. Now to do this, I've got on this is some more brand new technology. This is a Flex hybrid pad. The white signifies polishing, and it's important just to get that lined up and centered as good as you can. And this is the Menzerna SI 1500. This is a medium cut polish. And instead of putting it on the paint like I do with the rotary buffer, I'm going to put this right onto the pad. Just like that. I'm going to set this on the 3 setting to spread it out. I'm going to bump this up to the 6 setting, make about 4 to 5 section passes, pull it off. Then we're going to hit it with one more polish, and then I think you're going to be impressed. So watch this. Okay, spread my product out. Here you go, Ben. Okay. Now what we're looking for here is we want to see the rotary buffer holograms completely removed and a mirror finish. What do you guys think?
Looks real good.
I think a lot of people look at that and say we're done. But this is show car work. So we're going to do one more step. And for this, we're going to switch over to a black hybrid finishing pad using the same tool, the Flex 3401 forced rotation dual action polisher. And we're going to drop down to a fine cut polish. This is the SF 4000 by Menzerna. And again, I'm going to put some right onto the pad. I'm going to spread this out on the low setting. I'm going to bump it up to the 4 setting, make about 4 passes, wipe off, and then I want someone to grab the swirl finder light and really inspect this paint. Ben, you got a good eye, don't you?
Yeah, I think so.
As a painter, you should. Okay, spread this out. Bump this up to the 4 setting. And just a little bit more pressure than the weight of the machine. Okay, let's give that a real soft wipe. Here you go, Ben. Now, how old is this paint, Ben?
Not even a week.
Not even a week. So this is fresh paint. What does the paint manufacturer recommend before you seal the paint with any kind of wax or synthetic paint sealant?
90 days is typical.
90 days. Okay. So everything I've used here so far is what's called body shop safe, or safe for fresh paint. So this is, at this point, this is where we would stop and we wouldn't apply any wax until the 90-day period is passed by. We do have one more product that we would apply, and that's the product we would glaze the paint with before Doc shows this to his son, and that'll be the Imperial hand glaze. But what I want you guys to do right now, as far as the machine steps, we're done. How does that look?
Looks like there's a few little scratches from the towel, but the machine glaze would take care of that, I believe.
Yeah, and you know, just so you know, one of the things we're doing is I'm saving our best towels for when we actually do the work, and these are just our some towels I have for doing all the compound and polishing work. But you're right, that is a flawless show car finish. What do you think, Wes?
I think the doctor is going to be absolutely thrilled. As a son, I know that I would be awesomely proud if my father did the same thing for me. And I think that's what we're doing for the doctor. He's taken care of us for so long that we have to give him something back.
Okay. Well, tell you what, we've proven our system. We've sanded, cut, and polished the paint to perfection. Now that we know that this system works, we have the confidence to take over the rest of these panels and knock these out. But I want to let you know, we're not done yet. We actually have a VIP special guest that's going to be here at 11 o'clock. So be at your computer, get ready to tune in when we introduce them. You guys ready to get to work?
Yep.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Okay.